Hey guys, welcome to The Identity Shift. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Identity Shift. And as you guys can see, we have the famous Sylvia Paris here. And Sylvia Paris, you guys, if you don't know, you must be under a rock. She is the president of SVPARRIS Consultant. She's the CEO of the Delmore by Daye Learning Institute. Sylvia brings in over 25 years experience in community building, education, advocacy, and everything that's leading to systemic change. So, through her private consultancy, she has helped corporate firms, leaders, to transform their practices with a focus on measurable, that's the key word, measurable impact and sustainable growth. Sylvia is also known not only for her influence in the professional spaces, but also her deep commitment to advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion through communities at large. Her work has also a profound impact, especially on the African Canadian women in the public services. I actually spoke to someone yesterday, Sylvia, that admires you. Her name's Simone. As soon as I mentioned your name, she was like, oh my goodness, I remember. So she loves you to death, which is an initiative that she founded to uplift and support Black women in government. Sylvia is not only a leader, but a lifelong learner, currently pursuing her doctoral studies, which is insane, on Black women in senior leadership roles within the non-for-profit sector. Her academic and community work have earned her multiple honors, including the 100 Accomplished Black Women Award, the Atlantic Business Top 50 CEO Award, and the RBC Women of Influence Social Change Award. So Sylvia is definitely a proud Nova Scotian woman, Black woman. Her story is deeply rooted in family, faith, and community, and it has shaped her today. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining me, Sylvia. I have so much admiration, respect, and love for you, and I'm just excited to jump in. So how are you doing today?
Miss Tia, I'm doing great. And I have to tell you that it's so humbling to be in your presence
Oh,
because folks know out there, and if they don't, I'll use your same line, if they don't know, they must be under a rock, how much change you have been moving and transformation you have created, and all of your accolades that you have received. And I'm pretty sure there's probably a lot more around the corner. So, I mean, I'm so excited that you continue to grow in this podcast,
oh,
and
I
the
thank
naming
you.
is so intriguing. So, thank you so much for an opportunity for us to talk to each other in this way.
Absolutely. And the name, everybody always says, how did you choose that name? And the name, it just resonates with me because I went through an identity shift. And, sometimes people look at it as, oh, you changed up on us. You're not the same person. And I'm like, well, I'm not supposed to be the same person I was 10 years ago. It's called growth, right?
Right.
And for this, I was like, okay, the podcast, I want to bring on people who are influencers in their communities, people who are really doing the work, people who are striving, people who are thriving, and people who have a story that are not just came from like, a silver spoon in their mouth and came out here and started doing the work. So I appreciate the comment about the name because it really means a lot to me to really call this podcast The Identity Shift because that is literally who I am.
Yeah. I also want to jump on your word mindset. I
Yeah.
mean that is so intentional. It's so important. So for myself personally and for work areas, spaces that I'm at, Tia, like this growth mindset is so important,
It
right?
is.
That this idea about like not seeing yourself as not having agency or voice, right? Not seeing yourself as being directed by someone else, but having a vision and going forward and acknowledging there's a lot of hard work in that. Like that's the other
Jeez.
thing that I want to say. I know you give me the opportunity here to speak, but the other thing I want to say is, when someone's in front of you, it's like, man, looks all together. It is all great. You need to appreciate what went behind the scenes kind of to make that happen and what continuously does. So I think that people may know, so I don't want to underestimate people's knowledge, but the work behind the scenes that you do continuously and that you've done kind of to move here, it's like somewhat comparable if I talk in an academic moment,
Oh, yes,
somewhat
go ahead.
kind of comparable when you say, somebody delivers you a good paper it's a concise paper. It's informative. It directs, tells you what to do, but it had to be well researched. It had to be thought about. It had to be like presented in a way that people could read it and digest it. So what you see is that end product, and I'm not suggesting you're an end product because we're all talking about growing.
No,
But
I
what you
know.
see is that moment. But hey, folks, please also give some applause for the energy and the work that it took to get to this moment.
Absolutely, Sylvia. That is no truer words could ever be spoken, because people always see the finished product, and they like, oh, you're doing this, you're doing that, and it must be so great, and you have all these awards and whatnot. And I have to step back because what I want to say to them is like, girl, you don't even know. But then I have to look and say there was so much, pain, so much, so many tears cried, going through the transformation journey, to get to the end result of what people see me as now. But they don't realize, even up to today, the sacrifices I make, the things I do. They just see me when I come to an event, or they see me on TV, they see me on the podcast, or I'm at doing something for Black Women in Excellence. And they just assume that everything is great and everything was great, and it's farther from the truth.
Yeah,
Literally.
yeah.
So I'm glad that you mentioned that. And I am not an end result yet, guys. I just got started. It's only been, uh, and it's crazy for me. Someone asked me on a podcast I did as an interviewee last week. They were like, where did you come from? Like, when did this all start? And I said, to be quite honest, I've always been a business person. I had my first business in 2013. I was under the radar. I was just doing my business. No one knew nothing I was doing. Even really friends and family didn't know. They knew I had like a little cleaning company. And at that time, I had 3 businesses and not just one, but they didn't know. It's when I decided to do Black Women in Excellence. And I think it was, oh my goodness, was it CBC? I think it was CBC Portia who heard about it and did an interview. And then all of a sudden, Tia Upshaw came out, and they were like, really? And I'm like, yeah. So I've been doing it, but you stay in the background, and and in the last 4 years, there's been a lot that's happened and changed, for me personally too, like through Black Women in Excellence and through advocating and through creating opportunities in our community. I've transformed a lot too. So I owe a lot of my awards and accolades and whatnot to individuals like yourself, individuals that thought they couldn't start a business and they started and now they're scaling. That's why I'm here today, and that's why I'm able to do what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I know we had talked previously about kind of thinking about journeys and stuff to end, but I also kind of want to connect with some of the things that I feel are similar in our journeys. Although like my consulting business, when I started it, and I feel like in my learning with you that it was like a spurt, and that is trying to
Yes.
not just scale, but restart and then maybe scale too, Tia. But this idea about like kind of feeling people's energy and feeling your vision about kind of what you want to do for folks. My joy has always been to be with Black women and to be in
Yes.
community, and for a significant chunk of the work that I've done, my volunteer work and paid work, I've been able to relish that and to grow with that. And so this idea about being in spaces that you can like lift folks up and profile them, like you mentioned the African Canadian Women in the Public Service Network. I mean, that was a glory space. We collaborated together. We came together. We're supporting each other. We're getting to know each other. Those are, to me, like how we gather things that are across all the things that I feel like give me strength. And if I have the strength, then I have the ability to keep going, right? Again and stuff. So not kind of in a way that is about it's all what do they say? It's all flowers. There are lots of flowers that get sent, but there's sometimes those flowers have thorns, and so you kind of have to watch out for those too. But in the world where I love to be, I can come out saying that that's how I feel. Like that's what the joy is, and so I keep trying to think about ways that will in the big picture, if I say it that way to you, will be helpful to certainly to my community. But I'm very family concerned and
Yes, you
focused.
are.
So I know that some of the things that I do too, are going to be hopefully having a positive impact in terms of my family, because they'll create spaces for people for employment. They'll help address the education system. I have grandchildren now in the education system. My main work at DBDLI is about affecting that. So I know it's going to affect those precious children, grandchildren in my life,
So
and they're
true.
also going to affect black children, kinship children, if I say it that way, and the broader community. And so this thing that is about like kind of like what gets you up in the day and starts you with your affirmations. And for me, part of that is prayer, and
Yes.
and trying to do some physical
Oh, not
self-care
the
too, in terms
physical.
of some type of exercise and
Yeah.
stuff, so that we are like valuing our body, right, and valuing our mental health, and valuing kind of the possibilities of when those both are working at their best. So there's so much in these chance opportunities that we meet folks, like if you're at something and you can see them, and there's always something to glorify folks about, right,
Oh
to
my
let
goodness.
them have their light to shine,
It's so true,
in
Sylvia.
that, right? So yeah. I just
You
got it
know,
rolling here, sorry,
no, I
but
love it because we were going to go into the question about joy anyways, and you answered it without even me having to ask you the question. And this is the piece that a lot of people fail to realize, that if you don't find a piece of joy in anything you do, you won't
yes.
have that to fill your cup to keep you going. When you start, your association, when you're on all these boards, because you're on a lot of boards. I just seen a picture of you from a board on LinkedIn. I was like, Sylvia's on that board? Anyways, when you are doing this type of work that doesn't, financially help you, you're doing it for free as a volunteer because you're pure passionate about it. It feeds you to keep doing that 9 to 5. It feeds you to keep doing your business because it's a good feeling. It does definitely give you joy, and that's one of the reasons why I started Black Women in Excellence. Is because I was passionate, as you are, about Black women, because I am a Black woman, and I know how hard it was when I started my business, and the lack of resources and mentorship and communication or anything, education, anything for me. I said I'm going to make sure no other Black woman feels the way I felt in 2013. But with that being said, the love and the I don't know, the love and compassion I feel from working with so many Black women, it definitely fills my cup. It definitely.
Yeah.
So I know what you're feeling when you say that you're very passionate about engaging with Black women. And to me, there's Black women that are in the professional world, and they'll come to me and they're like, oh, I don't have a business, but I want to be engaged, whatever. And I'm like, that's fine. Let's have you be a mentor, right? And then usually when they become a mentor, what happens within a few months, they're just like, listen, I'm looking at starting a side hustle at this point, because just being around, so many women, Black women in these networks, and listening to you, you make me want to start a business. And I'm like, well, anything's possible. You can work and you can still have your side hustle, have your 9 to 5, which is another stream of income. Because I mean, in 2024, we have to have multiple streams of income to even kind of live, not even comfortably, live okay, right? So I appreciate you mentioning your joy, because it is, for those who are going to be watching and listening to this, you need to find your joy. When you
Yeah.
find it, everything else in life becomes a little bit easier.
Yeah,
Literally.
yeah, and don't. And I would say to folks too, don't try to kind of parcel yourself out too much, or divide yourself into pieces. Because for me, like, I'm this whole Black woman, right, and stuff. And so when I walk into spaces and when I try to behave in a certain way, that is who I am and who I will be. And so also inside that is, so what are the things about me, right?
Yeah.
I enjoy study. Study gets me passionate as well, like in terms of kind of what I do. I love to read, I love to learn, I love to think through things. I love to be in meeting in spaces. And as much as I love to talk, somebody might say, what, when I say this part, but I do like to listen. I feel like I've got sweet sauce that is about being able to listen in well. Like, I guess they might say active listening when they talk about it. But I listen, and what I'm listening for is, depending on kind of where I'm at, but generally I'm listening for what's the opportunity here,
Yes.
right? What is the
Right
opportunity here? That's what I'm listening in for. And then what can I contribute to that? You mentioned about, I love all the boards I'm on. I grow and I
Oh, I
learn
can tell.
everywhere, and I contribute, hopefully, and they're happy in that one. But like being on boards and things like that is another way of learning and growing. I'll say that out to folks. So, as somebody's probably going to be recruiting for the Delmore Daye Learning Institute board, I'm going to say that out there, and some of other boards that I'm on. There is, like, you learn so much there, and you learn in different ways. You learn in the conversation. You learn, you learn through different connections that come out of that. You learn that what you have to say is important, right?
That's
say
it right
that.
there.
Yeah.
That is it. And that's one of the things that I love. Now, I'm very selective on what boards I go on now because I can't be pulled in all directions because, you get to a certain level, everybody wants you on their board. But I only go on boards that really align with, me and my beliefs and my vision and mission that I want to see happen in the community. But whenever I'm on them, I feel like I have a voice. I'm able to be heard and I'm able to learn because every board is run differently and every board has different people on it, which means you get a selection of individuals from all sectors, all industries. And like you said, you listen. So you listen to see where the connection and alignment is. Where is this opportunity going to go? And that has helped me propel also.
Yeah, no,
Really.
definitely that for sure. And I can just imagine all the invitations that you have for boards, right? And let's be kind of transparent too. That's one of my words. I love accountability and
Oh,
transparency. I love those two
accountability, a big
words,
one.
right? And that one. And so, because some folks, like, maybe when they invite you, they're inviting you with maybe like, oh, we would like to have this kind of position filled when our seat in whatever equity, diversity, how it might be called, Phil. And what I say to that kind of thing is I don't go with the acceptance in that way. So I don't, even though that might be behind the scenes from someone, when you're there, anywhere you're at, speak and speak in a way that shows your, so even though here I'm trying to like set up a little more straight, right?
Yeah.
That says because you're the expert in what you know. So
It's
speak
so
in that way and come and bring that, and people invite you to boards with an idea, because generally when they do the interview, right, they ask you about kind of what you want, and they tell you a little bit what they want. So if that fits with you enough to say yes, then also continue that way. There
And if it
is,
doesn't,
right?
it's okay to say
Yep,
no too.
it's okay to say no, and that's
Yeah.
what beyond knowing, like as you mentioned, the time constraints and things like that. You want to be able to feel like I can influence this, right? And that I'm not trying to
Absolutely.
run it. I'm not trying to not hear other perspectives. I just want to have my voice be
I
known
want to
as
have my
having an
voice
influence. Yeah.
and I want to influence, like you said. Here's the thing, and I hate to keep talking about the board thing, but for me, I don't even think it's so much as a diversity seat. I think it's so much as, because I asked them when they asked me to be on a board, the first question I'll say is, what do you think I can bring to the table? And that usually stumps them because if you want me, you're going to tell me exactly what I have to bring to the table, and I don't want to hear because you're a public figure or you're on CTV or everybody knows Tia. Because I'm more than that. I want to know what you think that I'm going to add to the value of your organization. And if they can't answer it appropriately, sometimes they don't even answer it. They just don't even respond to the email. It's a no.
Yeah.
It's a no.
Yeah.
So it's not always about having that diversity seat filled. It's about so many other things. Oh, you're popular, or you have big social media, or whatever it is. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing it for that, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. I hear boundary setting in there. And I think
ooh,
that is like so important in so many ways, right? And sometimes it just shows up as not necessarily explicitly said, but in how you act, right? So like for me, I have boundary setting around things like when I listen to how our folks go, and if it is evident, if I say it that way, that folks aren't sincere. They aren't genuine about what they've said that they want to
yeah.
do. then I'm open to giving you kind of a direct conversation about that and choice. And then, I can like move away or move on, kind of,
Oh, yeah,
whatever.
you're like me.
Right. And the other thing for me, or another thing that's big about kind of boundaries, and I guess it would also kind of merge in with trust, that because that affects your boundaries too, I think, in
It
terms of
does.
conversations, is to also have folks say to me, what are your boundaries? Like,
Oh, I like
what
that.
is it that I should understand from you when I reach out and I ask or I say things, or how you'd like to have these conversations, right? We want growth, right? We're back to that word, the whole growth and the growth mindset thing. So we need to be able to have authentic conversations that aren't cloaked under this thing, well, I'm just being real. Because
Ah,
sometimes when we hear that, that is about you saying something, finding a way to say something that in the beginning is not
it's
appropriate
not
to
right.
say.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
That. So I'm talking about authentic. And when I feel authentic, I feel like in my heart, it's not necessarily right. So I'm not using the word right. I'm saying authentic, because then we'll have a conversation. Because when we talked about our boundaries, we talked about trustworthiness, we talked about being accountable and transparency.
Mm,
All of those pieces are in there for me when it's like, you know what? You want to say something to me about someone. That's not how I roll.
no,
And
Sylvia does
it's
not.
not my experience. So,
Oh, I love
those
that
things.
statement. I've been using that lately. That's not my experience. I'm sorry that you experienced that version of the person, but then I have to push back and have to say to them, I'm wondering what caused you to experience that type of person. What got to
I
that
love
level
that.
where that person had? Because I've never experienced that,
Yeah.
and that's what
I
they
love,
said
sorry, T,
back.
I'm jumping on you in that. I love that because I feel like that also brings people back into their own accountability,
Absolutely.
right? So, yeah, I love that.
It's a good one, so you may want to try it one day. And I didn't know you were into reading. I actually have a book that I got from a professor at the, St. Mary's last year. It's called Rest is Resistant, and
Hmm.
it's by an author named Trisha Hershey.
Got it.
And
Yep.
you have it?
I have it. I have it on
Oh,
Kindle.
I
But
want you
it's
to get. I'm
oh
gonna
no,
give
but
it to you.
I don't have the hard book. I have it on
Okay,
Kindle.
okay, good. That's one of the books I've been really like going on Amazon and buying and giving to people in 2024 because I want people to understand it's okay to take naps. It's okay to take a step back. It doesn't diminish everything you've done. You're taking a rest period for yourself to go through the growth. I love it. I go back to that book all the
Hmm.
time. So as
Hmm.
soon as I heard you say you like to read, I'm like, I'm gonna get that, and well, I'm gonna get your hard copy. That's gonna be my next
Yeah.
gift to you.
All right. I will welcome that because, some of the things I don't know, folks. I have I have a vision challenge, and so there's different ways that I'll say it this way that I digest books, resources, papers, and stuff. And
Yes.
sometimes it's, one of my ones is a combination of listening and reading at the same time because I've always loved the book. My
Yeah.
house is full of books and I have such trouble giving them away or letting them go because they feel like something. They have a persona for me in terms of them. But yeah, I
Yeah,
really
I don't.
appreciate that. And I love that we're reading the same thing.
Literally, that and my other favorite is 48 Laws of Power. I've been
Find that
reading
one.
that for about 10 years off and on. It's basically ways that you can outsmart your enemy, basically.
Oh, okay.
And it's really good. You may want to Google that. And another
Hmm.
one, most recently, that I read 4 times in the last 2 months is Having the Courage to Be Disliked.
Yes. Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah.
That one
I
was a
got
good
that
one
one too.
because
Hmm.
when you come into roles and you're proficient on this as a leader, as a black woman leader in the community, when you come into a role that you're kind of pushed into, because it wasn't a choice for me. It was almost like, oh, there's a title for you. We're going to give you this title, and now that's what you're going to be.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
no longer that T is the entrepreneur. It's like, oh, you're the leader in the business community for black women.
Hmm.
So the
Hmm.
title was given to me. I wasn't asked. I didn't want it. It wasn't a choice. But I took it. I take it. And I still deal with it. But when you become a leader and you're making change and you're having those uncomfortable conversations, you're not going to be liked.
Hmm.
And boy, I can
Hmm.
tell you, as a human being, nobody doesn't want to be liked,
Right.
right? You don't
Yeah.
want to have people
Yeah.
not like you. Like you're just human.
Yeah.
And that book, when I'm having a hard week, Sylvia, Oh, I go back to it. So that's another one I may actually gift you for Christmas. Having the
Yeah,
courage to be
all right.
disliked.
Thank you. No, I
Yeah.
like it. I want to mention a book as well that I've been reading that I'm trying to I'll use the word, I'll like say the word out loud again, grow. I'm trying to grow in terms of this leadership slash management kind of thing because
Mm.
they're distinct, right? And so I'm reading one that's written by Kim Scott called Radical Candor.
Oh, I
And
heard about that.
yeah,
Is it good?
it's excellent, right? It's excellent around the pieces about kind of leading, giving feedback, like yeah, it's really really good, and it's one of these ones that has kind of templates on things too to help you with thinking and planning
Okay.
in it. But
Okay. Yeah.
what I wanted to kind of to acknowledge here in our conversation, this thread of various ways that we're committed to growth.
Yes.
Like we read, you're a multi books author, right? Four, maybe I'm short now on the
Yeah.
number.
No, I'm at 4 now.
You're at four, okay. So, and I would say again, kind of to the reading piece. I used to when I was teaching, I would in the public school level and still like at post secondary level, I would say that the reading is so important to the writing. And what I was meaning by that for folks was, uh, you see styles. You get the content. Obviously, I think people think of that, but you also see styles of writing. And so read fiction and read nonfiction. I was saying to someone the other day, I really have to be pulled into fiction. I love nonfiction,
Same
right?
here.
In that. So, but read those things and think into them, right? In that, and like what, like when you feel those moments, right? Read poetry, you know. And we have some amazing young poets and seasoned poets here and
Oh my
authors in our
goodness.
community. Like we
So
have
many.
such a resource to draw from, right? Read has a way of help of engaging in writing, as well as, of course, the learning that you'll get from it.
Honestly, Sylvia, I'm so glad you said that because someone asked me about a month ago. I was at one of your keynotes, and my God, I left with like so many golden nuggets. I felt inspired. I want to know more. I want to figure out how I can implement what you spoke about. But how do you come up with your material? And I was like, well, it took me a while, but reading. Reading, there's different styles and tones in every writer. Reading and having references and making sure that you refer to those references and give credit, accountability, not accountability, credibility to the person when you're speaking. I just did a post this morning as a picture of me with a certificate from iSands. But yesterday, if you have Augie Jones on your social media, he did a post by Erica Badu, and it was a quote from her.
Oh,
Somebody asked her one day, what's the misconception about Erica Badu? And she said, I don't know. That's none of my business. And
oh, wow,
listen, so I seen
wow!
that, and I
Drop the
quoted
mic nugget. Mm-hmm.
I quoted Erica Badu in it, and I gave the credit to Augie Jones. So you need to make sure you do that too.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I'll be adding that in my next, because my most of my keynote speaking engagements are around resilience and what that
Mm-hmm.
looks like as a Black woman.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be adding that in there, and you just got to keep reading and educating yourself, and being able to craft what you're speaking about. You have to have your beginning, your middle, your ending, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now for me, I do mine a little bit different. I go from a middle part and then go back to the beginning. So I want to engage him with something. I think the last one I did, I started off with this time last year. I was at the awards for the Nova Scotia Human Rights Awards, and I was receiving an award for Dr. Burnley Rocky Jones. And why the hell would they give me that award? And everybody in the awards, it was the East Hants Business Awards, and they were just all looking like. And then I was able to go back and
Mm-hmm.
explain why that
Mm-hmm.
was a awakening moment for me.
Yeah, trailblazer. I'm sure it was in
Literally.
that. They had to be
So
in there for sure in terms of
yeah,
that. But and I also want to attach on your advice about like how to quote folks and making sure that we do that, and giving the props to folks as they
yes,
rightly deserve them in terms of that space. I also feel like that for me, in terms of the academic work that I'm doing, the in prepping for teaching and stuff for sure, but also like where I'm now started into this journey of PhD study, and I wanted to acknowledge this because of a couple of reasons. So one is we have talked about, and I want to always be intentional in terms of when I cite black folk, right?
Yeah.
I cite black women because may sometimes have to look harder to find it because we're not well profiled out there, but it does exist. But when you do it, and I think this will also maybe cross back to what you said in terms of featured speaking, keynote speaking. When we do it, it amplifies those folks, so the next time around somebody can find them easier. They actually show up in these threads. And while we're trying to influence and lead ahead around AI and use of AI, part of what we who are in academic world or in writing world or who's ever being quoted, the more that we put that out in the universe, the more the chat GPTs and the Perplexity will know it and pick it up and use it, right? And we want that's a way of us featuring and keeping the humanness, if you will, that needs to be forefronted in the AI work in that world. But just like I said, just like cite people, name people, quote people, and like I love listening into like speeches and stuff, just kind of like you have said, and have the opportunity from yours as well to be able to say that. And they're relatively easy to quote, like in the paper world, because you can just say in a conversation. You can. Right? Yeah. You heard it. But cite.
No, it's so true. Oh my goodness. I'm glad that you mentioned that about, putting it out there so it's easier to find, because there are black women who have done the work. Mm-hmm. But they're not celebrated. They weren't put into mainstream, doctoral papers and whatnot 30, 40, 50 years ago. But like Sylvia said, you guys, if you look, you can find. Mm-hmm. If you look, you can find. There's a few, when I was at your speaking engagement last year for the volunteer conference in 2023, and I was listening to you, and you do give credit where credit's due. Like, you do be referencing and you do be saying your little quotes. One thing that if you Google, it's a beautiful day to be a black woman, it will always come back to Tia Upshaw or Black Women in Excellence. Mm-hmm. Because I said it so much over the last 4 years, it's everywhere's, and now it's there. So whenever someone says it, I always say to them, like, all due respect, you need to make sure that you say, as Tia Upshaw says. Yep. But they do now. Like, they don't even hesitate when they do. They're like, as Tia Upshaw says, it's a beautiful day to be a black woman. So
yeah, and I want to take the learning from what you just said too. Just make your statement, people, as well. Like, don't be shy, or that was mine and nobody said anything. In that moment, take your space and do it. And if that moment doesn't work for whatever reason, you could always go back. Right? You can always go back to it and say, hey, I'm so glad that you thought that statement was great. It would have been great if you could have also said where you sourced it from, who it was. It was me. You could say right to them. I give people a lot.
And even on social media, I do it. Like, I had to make sure today, when I'm talking about the Erykah Badu, I could have easily took that quote and put it under my picture. Who's really going to say something? Who's really going to know the difference, really, right? Mm-hmm. But that's not the right thing to do. The fact that Erykah Badu said that in one of her interviews, it resonated with me so fiercely, because I was just asked that in an interview with CBC, and I actually answered the question. And then when I thought about it, I shouldn't even answer the question, because I shouldn't have to explain myself what the misconception is of me. Mm-hmm. I am who I am, and it's none of my business what other people think about me. But we're so used to defending our name that I went in and I actually answered the question. But I was like, I have to quote Erykah and I have to quote Augie Jones, because I would never have seen that quote if it wasn't for him posting it yesterday. Yeah. No, it's great. And, gosh, how many years now? So the African Canadian Women in the Public Service Network, oh my gosh, how many years old? We were 2011? Is that when we started? Yeah. Oh my God,
I
it's
feel
oh,
like it
it's
was around that time. Oh, please, folks who listen to this, Simone, when you hear this, oh, don't feel bad. But what I wanted to say in connection with that, in our origins and in the beginning, so it started around gathering, black women gathering.
yeah.
I'm telling you, those kitchen table talks, those lunch, those suppers, those evenings, like they are powerful moments. And when we got to like our first event, like the launch event officially of it, we were very blessed and fortunate to have her honor, Mayanne Francis, be able to
Really?
be our keynote speaker. And Tia, her, well, her message was fabulous, but her reminding to us, lift as you climb,
It's
right? And
powerful.
kind of all that you do. And maybe for some, maybe I said reminding, and maybe for some it was new, but whatever. Her statement kind of in that time, lift as you climb. And then her advice about how we can be for each other so that we can be a mentor, as we talked about. We can be a godmother, and we can be a sponsor.
Yeah.
And so the intentions in terms of the distinction, how at least I recall that wonderful experience, was the sponsor is someone that I may never know who advanced me, who spoke of me,
Wow.
who was in a meeting space and said, yeah, maybe you should write, but I may never know that. And I like that is like chills for me
Wow.
around. I think that we can do that, right? And what made me kind of be tweaked on that is when you said about we're pushed into space sometimes, or we feel like we are to defend ourselves. Like as long as we can hold in our heart our authenticity and our purposeful vision forward, no
Yes.
one needs to know that. We just can be smiling and be happy. And then, of course, the godmother was about the caring and the being intentional. And it's not necessarily age limited there in that way
No.
either, but being intentional and purposeful about that. And we know what it is in terms of a general. There's various ways to be mentors. So, like, for someone who is so graciously now still in my life as a
He
support,
is.
and for like she is always paying attention to how she can be in spaces and how her voice, of course, still so respected, can be helpful for our community broadly, but certainly for women.
Wow.
I mean, that was her context with us to help us launch that. And just to say, a little more, so that event, we had to figure out, like, where are all the black women, like, and what are they in and what are they doing? And so it was like kind of word of mouth across ourselves because there was no structure to look into. And so we had guesstimated what we could find. We 50 or 60 women. This is all the public service at all kind of levels. So we were joyfully surprised when we had the event to have 90 plus who were able to come. And now those numbers, that's back then.
What
Hopefully
is it?
those
A
numbers have
hundred? I think
grown.
someone said there was 193, or was it Simone who said that yesterday,
Oh,
or was it me researching it? It's a lot. It's
it's
a
a
lot.
lot, right? Yeah. Yeah, and we're still hoping that, governments and recognize folks' talents and skills and continue to give them spaces where they can lift as they climb and where they're elevated in the positions of leadership where they have so much to offer, and that in terms of known in our community. But yeah, but really, like, contextually, I wanted to say this piece about how can we be there for our sisters, how can we be
Yeah.
there for the broader community in general, but how can we be there? Those at least are kind of three roles that I think that we can hold up.
Oh my God! I swear, I think like just I don't even have to ask the questions. Like we're just going with it because that was my next one about community. How can we better celebrate and promote the joy of Black women and leaders and
Hmm.
leadership roles, or Black women in general. And you mentioning about mentorship, sponsorship, a godmother, even an auntie,
Hmm.
for women, especially Black women, because as we all know, representation matters.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
traditionally, I had this conversation with an older, I'm going to say, she's about probably in her 80s now, older Black woman a few months back. And she was explaining, at some point for African Nova Scotian women, there wasn't enough roles in the professional field. So there wasn't enough for us to be able to capture. There's only a
Hmm.
few.
Hmm.
So then we got into that space of I can't, lift as I climb because I'm scared they'll take that from me, right? And she said, now we're on the other end where we're coming back to lift as you climb now. There's enough for all of us now. And when we were talking, I was like, that was really a thing. And she was in the 50s and 60s. It was actually a thing. If you were a black woman and you were a nurse, or you were a black woman and you were doing higher education, that was the epitome of successful, right? And it was hard for another black woman to say, oh, hey, sis, I know this opportunity. I'm going to introduce you, because the fear of that position being taken from that one black woman and then the newer one coming in taking it was real. And I'm like, that's how they pitted us against each other,
Exactly, right? That's a system issue. That's a structural issue, right?
Yeah.
And that probably some folks will will be thinking, yeah, that still exists somewhere around the world.
I know it still exists.
It still exists here.
Well, we can change that. So I do it every day. As Simone said yesterday, I was talking to her. It was actually yesterday, and she said, "What I like about you, the first time I met you, which is only about a month ago, is that, and I've been watching you since. You're not a gatekeeper. You literally lift as you climb.
Yeah.
Every opportunity that's out there, you just put out there. You don't even put it out there just for black women. You're putting it out there for anybody that is watching you."
Yeah.
And I said, absolutely. There's enough for all of us, Sylvia. There's enough for all of us.
Yeah. And if it feels like there isn't, then create more spaces.
That's what I do.
Right.
If there isn't, you create a space. Here's more spaces. You create the opportunities for yourself. Lindsay Ruck, let's say we're talking about Lindsay as a black woman author. There wasn't a space before Lindsay. Let's keep it 100% real. There really wasn't.
Yep.
Shantae Grant did her thing, but the space was very limited. And the minute that Lindsay came in, and then Lindsay was able to lift as she climbed and bringing in Bria and bringing in, I can't remember the other girl's name, as an illustrator, look where we're at.
Yeah.
Look where we're at.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I mean, and you mentioning those two folks, Lindsay and Shantae, like such representation of commitment, right? In terms of, again, and then like, looking at spaces and making the space, creating the space, honoring, honoring talents across a breadth of things, like you said, the illustrators, kind of whatever, and the word and that. So it's this, it's again, and if I might tag on to that, and sometimes there's conversations about younger generations, so we've just like profiled and named two young black powerful women who are who are talented and skilled, and who are also still very connected and committed to community and value the way that community is, elder voices, content, like all of those things I see in both of them, with so many things. So
and it's true. So they created a space. You got Shelley Fashion and then Tara Taylor creating the space for black artists. It just, and you have organizations like BWIE and BBI. I mean, BBI has been around for a while, but the two newest ones would be Black Women in Excellence and Tribe. Tribe works with the Black Indigenous people of color community and entrepreneurship, but Black Women in Excellence, we only serve and serve black women entrepreneurs only. And I don't say because we are pro black women we're anti anybody else.
Exactly.
As Kia Upshaw, I will support even a white male who has questions, because trust me, it happens all the time when I'm speaking somewheres. I have people that are not black will approach me and I'll sit down with them and have a conversation, Sylvia. But creating that space in the definition of being a black woman, and I didn't call it African Nova Scotian women of excellence, is because I'm trying to bridge a gap. Even though I'm creating spaces, I'm trying to bridge a gap between women from the Africa diaspora, women from the Caribbean, and African Nova Scotian women. Because the gap is so clear, and I'm trying to bridge it together and bring us together, because, we can be more successful if we collaborate in partnership together. So it's one thing to create the spaces. It's another thing when you're trying to really bring it in, because there are some, when I say talented, Sylvia, and you know this, talented black women. I'm speaking at an event next weekend or weekend after, the 11th. It's called the Hibiscus Ball, and it's over at Acreley. And it's put on by an organization called Woman in Half, Nigerian lady. And she's kind of doing the same thing I'm doing, trying to bridge the gaps from even African Nova Scotians in the Nigerian women's community. So she has me speaking there, and I believe Susie Hansen speaking too. And seeing the people that are going to be a part of her event, I'm like, oh, I didn't know this person. I didn't know this person. So she's giving me an opportunity to make my network bigger.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
exactly.
fabulous.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and I loved how you said, like, or at least how I heard into it, like, you can have a focus, but it doesn't need to be against. So, like, we kind of get ourselves, sometimes can be pulled into this siloed mentality
Yeah.
or kind of a defense. And it's like, if I'm saying I'm focused in terms of historical African Nova Scotian community, that's just a context focus. If I say I'm also focused in terms of diaspora, however something's working, that's a focus. If I'm like, which all of these things that I'm saying, I feel like to credit that I am. If I'm about kind of how we do things together, what we can do, and we're organizing around that, it just means multiple things are happening,
Absolutely.
right? And sometimes again, I'll go back to structure and systems, because somewhat what lands inside this is about competitiveness for resources. And I will stand by the statement: there is abundance. It's just a matter of where those resources are able to be
Bingo.
funneled, right? When we're
Bingo.
going for things. So we need to continue and hold sisterhood. Kind of talking about Black women now, and that's all. I think that's all across. And I hold to that. I hold to that very deeply and genuinely. And then there's spaces where things pull us into these kind of conversations about. There's a meant to be an argument about it. Like, we need to look back into the systems and saying, how come this is being set up this way, right?
Yes.
Right? Why is it being set up this way? And so while, like, you're intentionally having those conversations with folks, and folks are working, like I said, there's multiple ways to work at it, from kind of individual and our organizations and stuff. But let's not miss the opportunity to ask the question about what structurally and systemically is here that is keeping this stuff happening, and perhaps feeding it. And then what would be the reason for that?
Yeah.
So
And
challenge it.
how can we overcome that? How can
Yeah.
we correct it? I said this to it was to Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency a few years back, and it was just before we got funding or anything. And I blatantly said to them, the ecosystem that everybody keeps talking about for entrepreneurs is broken. It's been broken and is not set up for Black entrepreneurs, let alone Black women entrepreneurs. We are at the bottom of the totem pole, from all directions in the ecosystem. And I said, what happens to it? The ecosystem needs to be dismantled, and it needs to be rebuilt. It needs to be rebuilt with the premise of seeing Black and Indigenous businesses be successful. Bottom line. And they just kind of stared at me. This was a face-to-face meeting. They were like, I said, you guys don't
What
know
are we
me
gonna
well.
do with
You
that?
know, you don't know me well. I said, and I just am very authentic, and I'm very passionate about seeing Black women in business succeed, seeing Black women in professional settings get promoted, seeing Black women who feel like, life is the end and they can't be much better than who they are, be empowered to be much better than who they were yesterday. And we can't do that as an organization with our arms being tied by the systemic racism and discrimination that is embedded in your organization, in your funding streams.
Yeah, yeah. No. Step into it, folks, and take your accountability for that.
Yeah.
And it's, that speaks to, again, I think for me as well, is this idea about, like, valuing and being intentional, and coming out of that kind of in terms of an equation is the same somewhat we talked a bit about before. We know that there are Black women doing this. We know that there are success things in the community. We just need to be supported to either nurture that, reveal it, nurture it, grow it. But if you start with the assumption it's there, organizations I'm speaking to now, like COA funding, whatever, different things. If you start with the assumption is there, you're going to find it. It's one of the things we talk about a little bit around here. So we have this word Ubuntu, which I know you're familiar with.
I was going to say,
Right?
come on now, Sylvia.
Right.
That word is Giving
It's
every day,
got
all day long.
right. That's right. And so and so this idea about mutuality of success, reciprocity in terms of success, and entwining of humanity.
I love it.
And recently I've had the chance to talk to some folks and just to say, we're stronger at it when we look for it, right?
Yes.
So we're intentional about paying attention for it. I said this to someone recently. I was talking about from my teaching days, and one of the things for a couple of us who were colleague teachers in the staff room or in our hallway time watching, kids when we're on that type of duty, is our phrase and our thinking was catch them being good.
Oh, I
Because
like
if
that.
you're looking for catch them being good, you're going to see it.
You're gonna see it.
You're going to see it. You know what I found interestingly? You don't have to have in your mind catch them being bad as a thing in order to see them doing quote unquote bad things. But if you're not intentional about the catch them being good, you notice the challenges. You
Yeah, you're
notice
gonna
what might
notice
be
the
a
challenges
challenge.
every time.
Yeah. But if you're like catch them being good, you're going to see it. Right? You
Who's that
just
quote
right.
from?
We just my one
Okay.
in terms of like when we were in school. So it's uh, an educator's general thing. I don't like to name it, and I appreciate you saying that where it's going. But it was just like, yeah. So that was in this moment. I used to be part of a program when I was in school that worked in kind of a development support way with students grades 4, 5, and 6. It was a Brighter Futures initiative. Somebody out there, when they hear it, going to go, "Oh yeah, I know that one." But that's what it was. So we did like workshops with these kids. We took them to things. We like
Wow.
really created space for them to be leaders and to grow and show their way of doing things, and like amazing things with evidence for you. Like like you could see the generosity of time that kids would give to each other and how they kind of could understand when there was tension or acting out and something like that, that they could respond to that. But like I said, for us, in term, as adults and things we worked with parents too, was kind of a full service and community thing. Was like this, just this. We found this kind of nugget
I
thing that
love it.
seemed to hold. Catch them being good, because
You know I'm
that's
gonna
what your eyes
use
are looking
it.
for.
You know I'm
Use
gonna
it,
use
yeah,
it.
yeah. Use it. Spaces that'll hear broadly, and people will embrace it and translate it in the ways hopefully that work for them. But
Yeah, whatever
that's
way.
the intent.
Yeah, whatever way it resonates for them, I'm okay with it. Whatever way they take it and accept it, do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I just
Mm-hmm.
want you to look at it from a different perception.
Mm-hmm.
And what you said with regards to, these individuals are there. Black women in business and leadership roles in professional
Mm-hmm.
settings are there. There was a lady on my social media, and she's been following me for some time, and I've been following her back from my personal brand. And I reached out to her today, and I don't even know why I didn't do it a long time ago. And she does cakes. And I just said, "Good morning, Mama." She's African lady, a Muslim. Sorry, she's African, but she's Muslim. And I said, "Good morning, Mama." I said, "I noticed that your reel was like the reel on Instagram looked really good. The cake was fabulous, and I want to invite you on Tuesdays with Tea with CTV." Now, keep in mind, people are probably like, "Okay, well, anybody can register for that. The link is on your website." Yes, and that's the key, is that she didn't realize that she was good enough to just jump
Mm-hmm.
over and register to do Tuesdays with Tia. When I gave her the invite, she said, "Oh my God, this is huge." That was her
Mm.
response.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
though I'm thinking I'm giving an opportunity to anybody can just register and come on CTV Tuesdays with Tia. Once you put your registration in, we look at the dates and then we invite you to come on at a certain date and time. But not everybody sees the value in herself to
Yeah.
do that.
Exactly.
And this
Yeah.
morning, she was so excited. So she's going to be coming on in January with some of her display cakes and whatnot. And that is one of the reasons why I do what I do. To make
Yeah.
the long story
Yeah.
short, that moment this
That's
morning.
so beautiful, right? That's so
Yeah,
beautiful. The space to know, and like you said, like some more than some number, I guess, like aren't seeing that they have something to offer, and
yeah.
everybody has something to offer.
Oh, and she does. You
Yeah.
should see her cakes. Like
Mm.
I probably can't even afford the cake, but the cakes are beautiful. She does customized cakes, and she's so I don't even like using this term mostly because I don't like the definition of being humble, but she is very humble with her business. She's
Mm-hmm.
very in the background. Um, but she has what it takes. Like she could go on the cake box. She could do, those cake competitions, Sylvia. Like literally, you'll see her in January on CTV. But to have her say this is huge, and I'm thinking to myself, anybody could go register. But the point that she now is able to start seeing the value because little OT reached out and said, I'm inviting you on CTV Tuesday. You know what I mean? So if you see it, look out for the good, stop looking for the bad. I don't know why I didn't reach out to her before, but I'm glad it happened today because it was meant to happen today. This was her transformation, her journey today.
This was the timing was right.
This was the timing. So that was great this morning.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think about the word. There's a word that sometimes kind of goes parallel along with humble, but I can't think of what it is.
Oh, girl, find it for me because I can't
think of what it is.
Hey.
Because somebody says you're be humble or you're
a show off.
No, not Tia, not like that, but kind of in the same vein. But now I have to go look it up myself, and because it's also going to be a quote thing that I have to find. But what I recall from the essence of it was, it valued the word humble compared to this other one, and I can't remember what it is. Like I said, I've been struggling with it. But what I liked about the attribution to the word humble was, you know your skills, you know your talents, right? They're not undervalued, right? But humble gives me a space to say they'll be talked about, they'll be from me, they'll be amplified when it makes sense, when it's appropriate, when I need to. It's not like I'm under. The way that this was talked about, it's not like I'm kind of under a bushel or whatever. Right? Yes, thank you. Right, and that. But it's just like that. So I humbly come to this occasion. I come though knowing I've got something to bring, but I come humbly because there's other people. I got to find it because there's other people who have something to bring. I think, you know what I mean? That's how it was kind of talked out. And I thought, yes, I felt that. So I do have to find it. Yeah.
That's what I need because the term, I don't like the term. And Kamala Harris did an interview. I can't remember what news it was, almost a month ago. And they asked her about women being humble. How do you feel? And she said, well, why do you assume that we are aspiring to be humble? Mm-hmm. This is not 1950. I actually took her quote off that interview and I actually put it under one of my posts, and it was a picture of me speaking at the Construction 2 Battalion recognition to the Lindsay family, which is descendants of the Upshaw family. And I spoke at that unveiling a little under a month, so probably 3 days after Kamala Harris did that interview. And there was a picture someone took, I think it was Russell Gross actually, and it's me walking with my long gray trench coat and one of the service military men are not having an umbrella over me because they escorted me around all day. It was myself, Lieutenant Governor. It was a big thing. And I put that over my image and it resonated with a lot of black women. I said, Kamala Harris got that right. Not everybody is aspiring to be labeled as being humble.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
So I tried to use the word, but if you can find that phrase, give it to me. So
I'll have to go on the search.
Yeah, I'm gonna put noted Sylvia here. There we go. Need that.
See, all these things, conversations have a call to action, don't they?
Yes, they do. I'm big on the CTAs. Every time I'm facilitating, every student I usually facilitate with through workplace education, they're just like, Tia, you love the CTAs. I said, absolutely, because I'm business orientated. I'm not going to do something without having, the return on that. It has to be return on an investment. It has to be an ROI in it. So if you're going to put a post out there has to be a CTA. If you're having a conversation with someone, there has to be a call to action. You're not talking to them just to talk. You're aligning yourself with them for an opportunity to build something bigger. So you have to make sure you put your CTA in there. So yes, yes. Wow, we're almost at the end. I can't believe we're at like almost 12:15. That's insane. A couple of questions I do want to ask because I know a lot of people value your words, Sylvia, and having you be around them, your company, your mentorship, friendship, being a colleague. So what advice would you give to a black woman who are striving to become leaders while also prioritizing their own learning and their journey? Wow.
That's a deep question.
I know.
So I always kind of go back to trust in yourself, right? In that, and so the person that can give you the advice is a person that really knows you the best, and that's you, right?
Oh,
So maybe have a look in the mirror and have a conversation with yourself about what you have to offer. Always start with affirmations, right?
yes.
What I have, what my pause, what I have to offer, and what I authentically think I want to grow.
Oh, I love that. Do you have
Yeah.
any affirmation cards that you would recommend to anybody?
I have, to be naming them, I have this one it's called Wisdom Cards, and I had it for so long, I don't know exactly the author. I also do, if people are familiar with the book, The Four Agreements, the
Yes.
Four Agreements have cards as well. It's Miguel, and they have cards as well, and they're awesome. And my energy space is, like I said, I'm up in the morning. My faith is very important to me, so I have my Bible verse that I've had, and then I'm just thinking about I'm going into this day. What help me help me have the message that I can use and draw on. So I draw just kind of randomly those cards, and they generally give me something in terms of a message. And Tanya McCraig, who I just saw
Yes.
recently on where she was doing something with Nova Scotia Black teachers. Congrats to those teachers for having her in
Oh,
for that moment.
Tanya McHarg.
McCard, yes.
Yes.
Thank you for saying it well, so people know who I'm talking about. But she had
Yes.
also introduced these cards, and I don't, gosh, I don't know if I have the name here.
I can reach out to her and ask her because I
Ask her
want to
what it
put
is.
on this podcast. Like I
Okay,
want to put a list of so people can have their call to action to go find
yeah.
these.
And
These.
what it connects to is what we were talked about before in terms of rest, right? And in terms of care around those pieces. So it's fabulous. They're fabulous cards. I wish I could think of the name. But I heard about them from her, and so I have those as well that I use. So I could use
Okay.
all three in the morning, or I could use one or two, depending on all kinds of things is. But after that kind of, like I said, time to kind of get up, gulp down a full glass of water, because remember when you get out of bed in the morning, you're dehydrated.
Oh,
Grab down a full
absolutely.
glass of water, for me, have my Bible verse time, have this some kind of little stretch exercise, something that I do, and then it's like, okay, I'm walking around the kitchen, humming a little bit, something, having my day start. It's up early enough that no one else is in the kitchen but me,
I love that.
and so just kind of walking around and then thinking, okay, so now I'm going into my day, like, what is it that can be affirming for me and have guidance,
I
and
do
that's
that.
when I go to those.
I do definitely say I'm going into my day today, and I get up 4:30, and I'm like, what can I do positive today to help somebody, or how can I
Mm,
help myself be better than I was yesterday? I don't want to go any days where I'm not growing.
oh, I
I'm
love that.
going
Yeah.
through something I call the soft girl era, and a lot of people have noticed that they're like, you're very different than you were last year or the previous years. And
Mm-hmm.
I say, because number one, fighting, every battle is
Mm,
not conducive. Number one,
mm-hmm.
being angry at the the
Oh,
systemic discrimination and racism is not going to help. Number two, and I don't want to be that person. I want to live the
mm.
soft girl era. I
What do you
want to be
call it? What are you saying? Soft?
soft girl era,
Oh, okay. Soft girl era. Oh,
where you're
I like
just
that.
not fighting every fight. You're just taking care of yourself, and
Mm,
you're approaching things much differently. Not everything needs to be, an argument. Not everything needs to
mm.
be questioned. And that's where I'm at. So I said to people when they say, I notice that you're so much different. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going through my soft girl era. And if you think 2024 looks different, wait till you see 2025.
Soft girl era. I love it. I love it.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Listen, so I need your patience here because I don't like for me sometimes it's like it's on my mind and I'm like, "Oh, I can't let it go." And I found it. So the name of the book is Rest, R-E-S-T, didn't say that well, Deck. And it's 50 practices to resist grind culture. Oh my
Oh,
gosh,
yeah,
and it's by the same person.
I need that.
It's by the same person, but Rest is Resilience. Trisha
Trisha
Hersey.
Hershey?
Yes.
Oh my
Yes.
goodness.
Mm.
She is really good. I'm going to get that because that is a part of the soft girl era, that grind mentality that you have to listen. Okay, so you put me on. You
Okay.
put me on to that. Perfect. Now, the last question we have. Looking forward, Sylvia, what are some ways you hope to continue spreading the joy of black leadership as a black woman?
Well, I mean, intentional about the about embarking on the PhD study, right? And so for me, that one is, and my supervisor, if you hear this, I'm really trying. You haven't got all the stuff in yet, but I'm working on it. Um, but because I think there's a space for me with the experience that I've had, volunteer work, and where I'm at now, to kind of look to for something that can be structural, systemic, like policy stuff. Those are
Yeah.
my big words, that can come from this work, so that women in senior leadership in my focus nonprofits, is where I'm looking at right now. But women in senior leadership, like this glass ceiling, the cement ceiling, the sliding wall, like all of those things that we're experiencing, and it can't kind of not recognize. We mentioned who could have been the president,
Yeah.
Kamala Harris, like who is not, and what is in that from what we heard from the people who voted for the person who now is president-elect.
Yeah.
Like, what is in that? Because that was against something. That was against women. That was against black women, from
Yeah.
what I'm hearing and understanding, and what I heard myself in terms of listening to rallies and speeches, and that is, anti-black racism. That is xenophobic. That is
That is
patriarchy.
everything.
Right. That is all of those things. Kind of in that space. So for me, I have an opportunity to support change and transformation by coming up with structural pushback things in this PhD work. So that's definitely there for me.
I'm
And I
excited.
want to continue to be present in an authentic way for women, for black women. So I want to like work on coursework that for on a range of access, whether it's in the formal academic or in the volunteer sphere, and I want to like see either before that journey gets completed, the PhD, or on the way to that we can continue to create these structures that amplify women. And so maybe at some point we'll have a black women in studies chair in the academic world that is
Should
focused in
be.
terms of that. Maybe we'll have these entrepreneurship spaces that are okay with naming black women historically here, black women diaspora, kind of a combination of whatever. But
Absolutely.
create the spaces where we can be and grow and support each other. And then, and finally, kind of for me, in terms of the going, is to keep myself centered by what we use the word humble now, what we're exploring, but humbled in the way that I think it through, that there's so many folks out there who have already done things, who I have to always acknowledge, from that are on
Yes.
their shoulders, who have taken us forward. There are people that are in my sisterhood of, I'll say, the season right now, and there are people who yet to discover themselves and then therefore be discovered. I want to be in all of those spaces supporting.
Well, we are at the end of this, Sylvia. You know I love talking to you all the
Yeah, I
time. We need
love
to
it
get
too.
together for supper again. But for our viewers and our listeners, I hope you enjoyed this segment. We are in our season 2 of Thriving. And thriving means different things to different people. But I can guarantee you this episode today with Sylvia Paris, you will stop and you will take reflection and you will look in the mirror, as she said to do, and look at how you want to grow through your journey. And I want to say thank you. Thank you very much, Sylvia. And until next week, everybody, Tia Upshaw, The Identity Shift. Make sure you follow us on social media, on our Spotify, and on our YouTube page, and tune in every week. See you guys later. Wow. I want to be in the spaces with you, Sylvia. Make sure you invite me to the spaces.
That's fair. You're there. I'm following behind you.
Oh man, oh man. I feel the exact same way you do. Like I can echo it. I literally feel the exact same way you do. Over the next couple of years, and you couldn't make our AGM because you were getting an award. but we mentioned that our whole goal by 2027, 28 is to open an innovation hub where we have not only dealing with, economic development and business. We're going to have like health and wellness there. We'll have intellectual property lawyers, business lawyers, child care facilities, mental health. We want to be able to have people have access not only to the business educational and resources and access to capital, but everything else that goes along with being a Black woman and being a single parent as a Black woman and trying to start a business. And what you said about, you said all the time, paying homage to the ones that came before us, is that there's a couple of names that sit with me that I know I would have a hard time choosing between Black women who have economically, changed the game for Black women who are becoming business owners, that I want to name the hub space after. So it is, you do have to pay respect.
Yeah.
Because the platform for Black women in excellence wasn't set by Tia Upshaw. There was work that was done way before I came in. I'm only 44 years old. The only difference is that the work that was done gave me the foundation to do the destructive work I'm doing now. And we're in an era that I can get away with calling people out and challenging the systems that Black women could not do 30 years ago, 40 years ago. That is the only difference. But it was done before me.
Yeah, such a poignant point to note. Yeah, it was there, and people were doing it in the way that they could do it, and even and recognizing folks who you may not have heard speak out loud. So much is done behind those scenes. So much is done with.
I'm trying to get them folks to come out behind me now. Like, come out to an event so I can introduce you to people and let people know what you've done. Yeah. You're humble in your own own ways and your own means, but people need to know who you are and the work that you've done, because you're not voiceful enough. And then let's give credit to social media. So social media, has maybe Tia Upshaw out here because social media is able to spread it quickly. There was no big social media platform 20 years ago, Sylvia. There wasn't people quoting people and making sure it's in the AIs, the chat bots, and all these things, even 10 years ago. Right. So there are Black women out there who did the damn thing before me. It's just different era right now, and I'm just literally utilizing this era and doing everything that needs to be done. And guess what? Someone who comes behind me is going to go harder than me.
Yeah. And that's awesome.
I know. So that's the plan. So I'm glad that you mentioned that you always have to give that respect and homage to the ones that came before us and the shoulders that we do stand on every single day.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to Identity Shift. See everybody next week.